So you're doing all the things, you're eating broccoli till you turn green, you're taking Agnes Castus, you've removed every single piece of plastic from your life, but your periods are still heavy and flooding, your mood is all over the place, and heaven forbid anyone who should accidentally bump your breasts. Am I right? So what now? Well, with my first love, I'd tell you to see a homeopath. But for now, stick around because I'm going to share with you 3 things that I often see underpinning an estrogen dominant state. And actually, just really quickly before we get started, in my Haywire Hormone Fix program, I run 2 tests. One is a Dutch test, the other is a hair tissue mineral analysis. We use the Dutch test to look at your hormone levels and metabolites, how well you're using and clearing your hormones, and we use the hair tissue mineral analysis, or HTMA, to look at your mineral balance, your heavy metal toxicity, and it gives us loads of information into thyroid health, adrenal health, metabolic health, things like that. And the reason I mention that is because I'm going to refer to both of these tests throughout this video. Okay, so the first thing that could be underpinning your estrogen dominant state is copper toxicity, and this would show up on a hair tissue mineral analysis. Copper and estrogen have a bidirectional relationship. That is, copper toxicity can cause an estrogen dominant state, and an estrogen dominant state can cause the body to hold on to copper. Excess copper gets stored in the liver, clogging it up, making it sluggish and unable to do its job of detoxing excess estrogen. And then we end up in that estrogen dominant state, which causes the body to hold on to more copper, and round and round and round this interplay goes. So what does copper toxicity look like? Well, there's a whole host of physical and neurological symptoms. A lot of them actually look like hormone imbalance and estrogen dominant symptoms. And things that would cause copper toxicity is the pill or history of pill usage, xenoestrogens, the copper IUD, copper cookware, copper water pipes, drinking vessels, progestin exposure. So progestin is not progesterone, it's a synthetic form, and it doesn't have the same progesterone effect in that it doesn't offset estrogen. Vegan and vegetarian diets tend to be low in zinc and high in copper, and we need that zinc to offset the copper. Liver gallbladder weakness, so if there's sluggishness in the liver, we can't clear that copper. Chronic stress, it compromises our adrenal health. We need really strong adrenals to clear copper. Copper sulfate, which is a fertilizer used in organic farming and also used in the cleaning of swimming pools. So if you do a lot of swimming in swimming pools, you could be exposing yourself to copper that way. And finally, excessive supplementation, particularly things like beef liver, they tend to be high in copper. They can drive our copper levels up. Okay, another thing that might be a problem, or actually it's 2 things, and I use the Dutch test to assess this, is high androgen levels and high aromatase activity. Androgens are the small amounts of male hormones that we make, like testosterone, and androgens can be aromatized or converted into estrogen. So high levels of androgens could be driving our estrogen dominant state, and to assess this I'd be looking at a history of PCOS and also a history or current day problems of insulin resistance or blood sugar dysregulation. As for high aromatase activity, when the enzyme aromatase is elevated, androgens tend to get over-converted into estrogen. This is typically caused by things like inflammation, chronic stress, and blood sugar dysregulation, but also viruses like Epstein-Barr virus and nutritional deficiencies can be underpinning this. And with nutritional deficiencies, we're looking at zinc. So again, that sort of takes us back to copper. So with both of these, high androgen levels and high aromatase activities, I would be focusing on reducing inflammation, reducing stress, and focusing on blood sugar balance. And if you're thinking, yeah, I need some help in that regard, stick around because I've got something for you at the end of the video. Okay, the third thing that might be underpinning your estrogen dominant state is weight and toxins. So of course, this video is purely about hormonal health and estrogen dominance. It's not a commentary on body shape, but I know you know that. This is the internet. I feel like I have to put that caveat out there, unfortunately. But the truth of the matter is, the more body fat we have, the more aromatase we will have, because the aromatase enzyme is made in adipose or fatty tissue. So we can make estrogen from fatty tissue. But more than that, I'd be considering this alongside toxin exposure. Toxins can mimic estrogen. They cause an inflammatory state. They clog up the liver, the gut, and the bowel. Certain toxins, certain chemicals bind themselves to fat cells. So the more body fat, the more fat cells, and the more space to store toxins, and then the body responds to that by making more fat, and then from that more fat we make more estrogen. So I would be asking my clients about what type of food do they eat, what type of water they drink, what beauty products they use, medications both past and present, what they do for work, like if they're working with chemicals, is there some sort of exposure there? All of these things can expose us to toxins, to environmental estrogens or xenoestrogens, which bind to our estrogen receptor cells and stop our own estrogen from doing its job properly. And of course, creating a state of estrogen dominance. Additionally, I'd be using the hair tissue mineral analysis to look at heavy metal toxicity, specifically mercury, aluminium, lead, and cadmium, all of which have been shown to mimic estrogen in the body. But the truth of the matter is, when it comes to toxins, we live in a very toxic world. We have to decide what's important to us and make small changes where we can. It also can be incredibly time consuming and expensive. So just make the changes that you can and think about what's important to you in your life. So for example, I filter my water, I buy organic where I can, I use clean beauty products, but I dye my hair. So, just make the changes that you can and just be mindful of trying to reduce your toxin exposure. So I've given you a lot of information there and it might feel really overwhelming, but actually with each of these 3 things, it all comes back to reducing inflammation, reducing stress, and eating to balance your blood sugar levels. So start with those foundational pieces. Stress reduction and blood sugar balance will both reduce inflammation in the body. So start there. And if you are stuck and you don't even know where to start, grab my free download, Thriving in Your 40s and Beyond, because this will support you through those foundational pieces. I will link to it in the description below. And most importantly, with reducing inflammation and stress and blood sugar balance, it comes back to food. So if you haven't watched it already, go back and watch my video on foods to clear estrogen dominance.